Hey, welcome to the Cam Otis Show. We're a father-son business podcast where we talk with other lifelong learners about making an impact and solving big problems. And before I let Camden try to make fun of me for stumbling over the word podcast, I want to remind you that if you're not watching us on YouTube, switch over to YouTube after you get done listening to us on your uh, your podcast. I was going to put a plug in, but I won't. Your podcast helpful app, and then when you get to YouTube, hit the subscribe button. It's right over there. I'm probably on the wrong side. And then then the like button, which will be over here. So one of them's over here, and one of them's over there. And if you need help in figuring that out, call Camden. Please don't call me with that. I try to stay above the subscribe and like button category of solving problems in this business.
Oh my gosh.
So
that takes me back to my Verby days of some very fun help calls with some lovely older folks supporting the events who couldn't find buttons to join things, and gosh, those are very long conversations.
a patience tester is what that is.
Opportunity to learn patience.
There you go. Well, or you can be like my mother and just spell it every time I screwed something up. And that was she usually do that right before she throw the telephone book at me. I think is kind of what it was. And growing up in Fort Worth shows you my mom will, that telephone book in Fort Worth was no small thing. Let me tell you.
No St. Joe telephone book.
Oh yeah, yep. And speaking of patience, the man who's talking with us today, Jeff Russell, is being very patient as we flash back and BS around. How you doing today, Jeff?
I'm doing fantastic, Otis.
Good, man. It's great to see you. And I don't know why, but I find this interesting. It's probably because I'm blaming you. You are accepting blame on this. You put it on your profile that you were a DJ at Club Med back in the day. And I'm just like, and when I say back in the day, I'm talking like back in the day, when guys like Jeff and I we could still get away with those late nights. What was that like, man? Was that, I mean, I'm picturing, what was the Tom Cruise movie? Cocktail. I'm picturing Cocktail. Was it like that?
Yeah, started work at 11 p.m., right? And went to about 5 in the morning. And so, it was a different time those times, that's for sure. This is in the 80s. So think Miami Vice, white suits, right? Like it was at its highlight, I tell you. But love the experience. And it's funny, there's things I learned at Club Med as a DJ that I apply to my events today. And people are like, what? There's something different about this. Like, I don't know what it is. And it's some obscure thing I learned 40 years ago.
All right. Oh, you open the door, man. What is some obscure thing DJing down at Club Med that you're using for your events in this modern day time that we have now?
First of all, it's got to be in the right location, because when people go, I worked in the Bahamas and Mexico, people come to Bahamas, as soon as they get off that flight, they're just like their mind shifts. And they all of a sudden are open. They just want to learn. It's interesting. They get like that beginner learner's mindset, and because they don't know where they're coming. They've never been here before. They don't know what to expect, and they're really open. So I always do my events in resorts, right? Primarily in Scottsdale, Arizona. Nice, beautiful place. The other thing that I learned that I use is at Club Med, it wasn't the staff eat here and the guests eat here. You ate together, and they set up tables of 8. And so in the dining halls, it would be all these tables of 8. And we were told no more than one staff at a table, because you're there for the guests. And the guests, they're going to ask you questions. They're going to say, hey, what should I do? What activities do I do? So even the little interactions like that. And so at my events today, I always have tables of 8. Because maybe 6 sit down. Well, you have a great conversation with 6 people. If you have tables of 4, you end up with one person on their own somewhere, and they're not really part of the group. So doing something simple like that, eating with them. And so at all my events, I have all my faculty eat with our attendees. right? So they can ask questions in that. So a couple of good things. And
Yeah.
I learned how to clean an M16, but that's another story.
Hopefully there wasn't a drug lord involved there in the Bahamas. I don't know.
He said Miami in the 80s.
Yeah,
So.
yep.
Oh yeah,
maybe.
this was the big island that a lot of the cocaine from Colombia would hit, and then they would boat it with cigarette boats to Miami. So yeah, we've seen some gunships flying over the Club Med. Little stories that aren't on the brochure.
I'm curious. Talking about DJing and just like that kind of an environment. What kind of lessons did you learn as far as like the entertainment or like providing that kind of value? Because I always think it's interesting. You're a serial entrepreneur. A lot of entrepreneurs are really great at connecting dots from other areas.
Yeah.
Dad, we've talked about for the show. We are a business podcast, talking leadership and those kind of things, but we want to learn from the funny podcasts, the Freakonomics, all of these different things that are out there. It's like, look, we can learn from the best of those and apply it to this over here. What kind of lessons like that did you get from DJing?
What I learned is the music can put people in a different frame of mind. And so when they're in that entertainment or in that zone where they come into the nightclub, the music's going, the bars hop in, there's people having a good time, right? Like nobody was there for the wrong reasons. So that really helps. And what I love doing is I could see a room, and you learn how to read people, right? You have to read the room. Because if you have people that, hey, you know what, they want to listen to, Def Leppard and CCR, or do they want to listen to the Euro dance kind of mixed music, right? Debbie Gibson or whatever. I'm dating myself, right? You have to be able to read the room. And then what's amazing is I could be like, you watch this. I will take this room from everyone just sitting around to having the time of their lives. And the next morning they're talking about, we had the best time. So then we have more people want to come to the next thing. So I just wanted to give them joy. I just wanted to help them, right? They came in for a reason, right? Just to have a good time. And so that was very much always providing value to them, right? It wasn't about me. I didn't play what I wanted to play because I could play that whenever I wanted. I'm there for them. And I was giving them everything I had so that they would have. And if they didn't like this direction I was going, boom, let's switch to country. Let's switch to rock, right? Let's switch to the 50s. Doesn't matter to me.
How did you take that and shift it into, because you jumped into finance next. How did that happen? The financial world, because you're DJing, you're massaging the crowd and directing the crowd and picking out music, very, very artsy, to a very hard data sort of thing in finance.
Well, we have to go backwards a little bit so it gets better, right? So I'm actually in law school I'm in pre-law before I became a DJ for Club Med. I don't put that on my resume because, you know what? I was sitting in law library and I'm like, I cannot do this. This is not for me, right? I cannot sit. I'm a guy and I need to move around. I need to see stuff. I need to interact with people. So I made it through first year. I passed and did all right, but I'm like, yeah, this isn't for me. So I'm walking in Naples, Florida, where I grew up, and I'm walking past, you guys remember, this was a travel agency. And they had a brochure saying Club Med, and it had a beautiful beach. And I'm like, this is where I want to go. And so I created a mixtape and I sent it to New York, their head office, and they accepted me. And 3 or 4 months later, I dropped out of law school and I became a DJ at Club Med, like every parent's dream. Like, why wouldn't they want this?
Mom and Dad were so happy for you.
Exactly. But what I learned in high school was that I was the guy who provided the music. So I was very creative, and I had a mentor back then who was a DJ in a club. And I needed to make mixtapes for a fashion show or something in high school. And so my English teacher, he was a dyslexic English teacher. So that's always awesome, right? So his tests were always, in multiple choice. There wasn't a lot of grammatical and when we did do essays, his wife actually corrected them all. But it gets better. What he did when he was younger, he was a professional wrestler. Like a wrestler, like a television wrestler. This
Like
is my
a Saturday
English
Night
teacher.
Wrestler, right?
Exactly.
Oh man.
And it gets better, right? So he owns the biggest club in town. And so I got along with him. So he's the first person I ever knew who was a business owner. He was the first entrepreneur I ever met. My high school English teacher, grade 11, Bob Harms was his name. His fighting name was the Magnificent Mennonite. So we'll just go with that. I've been to his gym and everything. There's pictures with him with Andre the Giant and Hulk Hogan. Like he played in those. He wasn't the A guy, right? He was the B team. But he owned a big club. He also owned apartment buildings. And so I would help him, and we would go from apartment building to apartment building when I was in high school, and we would empty the washer and dryers of all the coins, right? Like this was his thing. Mm-hmm. And he was teaching me, you own the building, right? And then these people, they pay me rent, and then I make money off of the laundry. I make money here. And I thought that was interesting. And then we're going to his club, and we're emptying the Pac-Man machines and the pinball machines. I'm like, wow, there's a lot of money here. And I met this DJ, and I'm like, you know what? I have to do, I like how you can mix everything together, and I don't have like $100,000 worth of equipment in my house. But would you teach me how to do that? So during the day when the club was closed, he would teach me how to DJ. And that is actually what put me through college. Like I would make in the 80s, $200-300 a night. Like that was a lot of money back then. I worked in the hottest clubs in Florida. And then, so that DJ, that ability to do that, kind of put me through all the way from, as soon as I was in clubs working in DJ booths underage, like when I was 19 years old. They would just hide me in the booth. Right. And like you couldn't see me, you couldn't access me. But they're like, hey, why don't you do this set? And that's how I learned. Right. And I'm still friends with that DJ today. It's, all these years later. So, yeah, I finished Club Med. And one of the things, if we go a bit earlier, is I'm an Army brat. My dad was in the Army. So we moved around every 2 to 3 years. And in the 80s, we didn't have computers, right? But we had this shop called Radio Shack, and you could buy like a computer there, and it was like a 4K, like this was a supercomputer. And so my dad bought us that, and I actually learned how to program my own games on my own because we couldn't afford any games to buy, and there weren't a lot. So I had to actually learn coding on my own, and I would code and create my own games. And this is like early 80s, right? Mm-hmm. And so when I finished DJing, I'm like, you know what? I need to do something that kind of works for me. And coding was easy, right? It just came very easy. I could go in there and code. Sitting in a law library and doing other stuff like that didn't come that easy to me. So I actually got my degree in computer science. So that's where post that we go to computer science school. I become a great coder, and it's all fantastic. And then I'm graduating, and I'm like, I had 2 options to work. Back then, this is late 80s, it was a company called Xerox, which you should know. But at the time, it was one of the biggest companies in the world. They invented the mouse. They invented the GUI, which is the basis of Windows and the Macintosh operating system. And I
thought they just made copying machines.
I know, right? Yeah, no. Their tech park in California is phenomenal. And then IBM. So I'm like, you know what? Xerox seems like it's going places. Like they have this cool stuff. So I went to work for Xerox. And so that was the beginning of my first corp, because that's what you're supposed to do. Mm-hmm. And that's what I learned growing up was, my dad was in the Army. So you go, you do your grind, you go on deployment, you go for a few months or wherever he's gone, and then he comes back, and you work hard, you work for a purpose. So that was always, but the purpose was Xerox, right? The company. And so that was my first business. That I didn't know anything else. But in the back of my mind was that English teacher telling me, showing me the buildings he owned and how it was. And I always found that fascinating.
What was the catalyst that, brought that from the back of the mind to the front of the mind? Because I can kind of see the thread connecting, just curiosity and that little bit of the entrepreneurial spirit, but it sounds like you hadn't put a name to it yet. You were still just kind of following there. What was it that brought it all the way forward of like, okay, I want to be an entrepreneur?
Yeah. So from there, I went from Xerox to I worked for Fairmont Hotels, as a director there. I worked for Allianz, which was we managed $3 trillion worth of assets. They own the Fireman's Fund and others, a German company. So I kind of went through that thread, the corporate kind of thing. And I would last about 4 years. And then I would either get bored or they would lay me off because I never did bad work. So they could never fire me. I was really a good worker. I was smart. But my last time, they're like, Jeff, okay, you need to go. You've done nothing wrong. You're a great worker. But, I think I was if people didn't do things the way I think they should be done, I would tell them. I had no filters, right? So this is not a good way to climb the corporate ladder when you have no filters. Right. And so the last one, they gave me a year's salary. So that was like set me up 6 figures. And then they gave me coaching, career coaching. And it was like, you learn how to do your resume and how to interview. And they did all those tests like Myers-Briggs and all that stuff. And the guy at the end comes back, Jeff, I actually don't think you should go for another job. You have all the traits of a business owner. And I'm like, okay, but I've never seen a business owner in my family. I don't really have anything, but I was thinking back of The Wrestler, right? Back then, I'm like, yeah, but I don't know anything. So I need to follow a system. And they're like, well, there's something called business opportunities where you can pay them money and they'll teach you everything about the business. And then you kind of away you go. And because I had finance background, they're like, well, there's this one that's an equipment leasing broker. And you go to St. Louis and then you learn how to do that. You pay them $10,000 and they'll show you how to do that. They'll show you everything, the business, everything. I'm like, awesome. This is perfect. Just tell me exactly what I have to do. And for the first 6 months, I was supposed to make 50 to 100 calls a day, just random cold calls. And I'm like, nothing was beneath me. You told me to do that. I will do it. It's easy. I'm very simple that way. And so I made those calls. And then about 3 months into it, I didn't make a sale, not a penny for 3 months. But luckily I had that money in the background, so I wasn't going hungry or anything. Then boom, made a sale. And in one deal, I made $10,000. I'm like, wow, this is really good. This is 30 years ago or 22 years ago, I guess. And so that was a lot of money back then, one sale. And then I did another sale, and this time it was to a doctor. And when I did that deal, oh my goodness, he basically signed his name and they gave him $250,000. Now, other business owners who were not physicians, when they wanted $250,000, they had to sign over their children, their house, the 15 years of tax returns. Like, I don't know, like I'm just being flippant, but it was not an easy process. And so that led me. So now I learned how to do that. And one of my philosophies I always follow is follow the money. Okay, it takes me 80 hours to make $10,000 doing a non-physician. It takes me 2 hours to make $10,000 doing a physician. Okay, the writing's clear.
Where's the next doctor?
Yeah, I'm like, equipment lease. If you're not a doctor, I am not interested. And then I focused on focusing on the physician market. So first cosmetic stuff, a lot of cosmetic clinics, urgent cares.
Was that just because of the location? Were you still in that Miami area? Because I always, the couple of times I've been to Miami, it's very, we'll just call it what it is, superficial. Let's just say.
Absolutely, yeah. Florida and Arizona. So another place. So okay, here's where old people go to die: Naples or Scottsdale. Okay, so. Camden, you know this. You're down south, right? So
That's a fact.
So I
Oh
just
my
like, what are you going to do? So you just follow. And I never had to be there. I was always on the phone, always worked in my basement. Like, so I started this business, my first business in my basement, and never had employees or anything. But then that first employee is always a tough one, right? Should I do it? My regrets always have been I should have hired earlier. It's always the regret. It's never, oh, I should have waited or anything like that. Yeah. And then what was interesting is, on my follow the money. So while I was doing these clinics and they were buying lasers and things to do cosmetic procedures, they would ask me, well, how do I use it? It's like, well, I'm not a doctor. I don't know how to use it, but I help these doctors, in Newport Beach and, Manhattan, go ask them how to do it. And they would do that. And then those doctors would come back to me and say, Jeff, stop sending people. I'm busy. Okay. Like I get it, but I just want to help them because, they're asking me. And then the light bulb went on. I wonder if I go interview all my doctors and then created a course and taught them how to do that, if that would work. And so I'm like, you know what? I'm going to send an email to all my financing doctors and say, hey, we're going to run in a course in Scottsdale. We're going to teach you how to do the Botox injections, the cosmetic stuff, the lasers. I had a whole network of doctors, so they would come and teach the clinical. And then I taught the business, right? How to open the practice, how to set it up. Because one thing doctors never learn in medical school is anything about business. So they love this. And my first one, I had 8, and that was $20 million ago. So what happened was in 2008, we had a bit of a hiccup in the economy. So my leasing business tanked because there was no money. My biggest provider of money was GE Health, General Electric Health. They do MRIs and big medical division. So that went to zero. So all of a sudden I'm like, I'm so glad I diversified. But was I smart enough to know to diversify? Not at all, right? It was totally by accident, right? So it was not on purpose at all. And so all of a sudden it's not a problem. Boom, I switch over here. And I had to learn about diversification during COVID because here I am doing millions of dollars a year on live training and I can't do live training. So we go from 6 figures a month to $3,000 a month. And I'm like, okay, but I have all this content. How else can I deliver it? Let's go online. And now I do more on online revenue than I do on live. So, the tips in the thread is provide value that people will pay for and find value. And then always follow the money, right? So you don't have to pivot, and nothing was a complete pivot. Everything was just kind of a shuffle, slight pivot here. I didn't lose my core. I financed medical equipment, trained on medicine. That's what I did.
This episode of the Cam Otis Show is brought to you by Evergood Adventure Wine.
Our loyal listeners know Evergood's founder, Matthew Hexter, and our good friend from his appearances on the show that have never disappointed. And Evergood Adventure Wines doesn't disappoint either.
No, it doesn't. Evergood is a craft winery from Colorado that makes wine from lemons, not grapes.
That's right. Picture this, adult lemonade.
Oh yeah, perfect for your next backyard barbecue or hanging out with friends at the beach or the pool. No need to drink a warm red grape wine when it's 100 degrees out or much hotter here in Tucson. Evergood over ice is the perfect refreshment for a hot summer day.
And they come in a variety of flavors, including lemon, strawberry, lime, my favorite for margaritas, grapefruit, and watermelon, which comes in a cool pouch, by the way. These non-carbonated wines check all the boxes. Gluten-free, vegan, low sugar, and low in sulfites. Best of all, they taste damn good, and they have fun names, too.
Yeah, like their OG lemon wine called Skierpy. Yeah, y'all heard that one right, Skierpy. And I'll tell you, Skierpy is also one of my favorites.
Evergood now ships to 41 states, so you can order your lemon wines online at evergoodadventurewines.com.
Plus, Matthew is being kind enough to offer 20% off for all of our listeners. Just use promo code CAM-OTIS at checkout to get 20% off and start enjoying these amazing lemon wines.
So y'all go to evergoodadventurewines.com or click the link in the description in the show. Click buy now to redeem your Cam and Otis Show exclusive discount. I'm fascinated with and we all know this, the fall of the money, and maybe it's a little bit of the industry that you were in, vice the entrepreneur who creates the widget, and the entrepreneur that creates the widget thinks the widget will cure cancer, hang nails, help you sleep better. They're tied to it. And it's so hard.
It's the field. What is it? Field of dreams, right? If you build it, they'll come.
Yeah, exactly. I built it. How come nobody's here? How do you? I mean, because I'm sure you still have that similar pull. How do you keep that yourself honest in that aspect of, it's follow the money. Yeah, that would be really fun to work with these guys over here, but they ain't got no money. So how do you do that? How are you handling that?
One thing, if I have a secret power or a superpower, it's I can filter and stay focused, and it does not bother me. And am I all about the money? No. And this is what I teach the doctors. If you provide a great service for your customer, the money will come. It's never about the money. The money is just secondary. If you provide a great value, a great service, and they tell everybody, then that will create a huge successful environment for you. As far as and so I'm the guy like, hey, squirrel. It's like, oh, well, look at that. Look at that. Like I have to really really be. So I have my filters and I'm like, okay, is this going to get me to where I'm at? And I kind of have a filter 3 things. I filter health, I filter wealth, and I filter wellness. And the wellness is the mental wellness. So is this congruent with I'm not going to do something that I don't agree with. Like I don't, and I have no opinion on people who do this or not, but I'm not in the cannabis business, right? I don't have anything in there. I'm not in pornography. I'm not in there was like, hey, you got to come get in here, like easy money. It's like, yeah, that's not congruent with my mental wellness and how I feel as a person. So I'm just not going to do that. No amount of money is worth it, right, to do that. And so the wealth is one. And I like high profit margins. And I learned this at Fairmont Hotels. Some of our hotels we do 150 million a year and 75 million would be profit. So I learned 50% profit margin. So all my projects are 50 to 80% profit margin. If I don't have that profit margin, not going to do it. And sometimes it comes up, it's a 15% profit margin. And then I'm like, how can we make it a 50% profit margin? What can we add on, right, that all of a sudden people will pay for? And a lot of people say they'll pay for something, but until they write a check, it's just that, right? So are you a check writer? Is Dan Sullivan out of Strategic Coach, he calls his things check writers, right? And I'm like, hey, are you a check writer, or just till you write a check, your ideas aren't really going anywhere?
Talking about your process of filtering there, I'm curious, what is your process for the ideation side of that, of coming up with those new ideas? You mentioned follow the money, but I think there's an interesting thing where and I might be oversimplifying a bit, but to me, what that sounds like a lot is like I have this business here, and then I see this thing next to it, and I can go, okay, go into that. Oh, I see this one over here, and you kind of leapfrog like that. How do you continue to find those new opportunities around you? Because I would think at some point, if you're in one industry, at some point it's like, all right, I checked all the boxes. These are all of the 50 to 80% revenue based ones. It's like, all right, what am I going to do now?
Yeah, and I have 6 businesses, right? And they're in different industries. So 2 are in medicine, the others are not. So my process doesn't really specific to medical, even though I gave medicine as the thing, right? So I still do regular financing and all that as well. I always ask questions, and I have a filter that I have a worksheet that I kind of fill out, and I'm like, what's the best thing that can happen? What's the worst thing can happen? And how is this going to take up any of my time? So 2 years ago, I started working, I made a 3-year goal for myself to work 10 days a month, and that was it. So I started that 2 years ago. And that was my filter. So if you ever gone on your family vacation and like the Friday before, you get more work done in that Friday than you do the
Yeah.
entire week. That's how I work every day when I do work. Okay. So only 10 days a month I'm going to work. So now that filter is like, is this going to be an ROI? Right? Like, where is the ROI going to come in from? So I have to kind of do some hard facts because me and my emotional, like, I can get distracted and I'm like, oh yeah, I'll do this. I've done a lot of different things that you have to realize there has to be a future ROI, and maybe you grind it for a bit. Like I grinded it for, I didn't make $1 million probably for 2 years, right? Like it took a long time to get there. Now it's multiples, right? So it exponentially grows itself. So I understand the grind, but you don't, but now I filter it very well because sometimes earlier on I'd filter and I get a 10% return. I'm like, well, it's not a good return on my time, right? It's very limited. Your time is very, very limited. And I always think about who's going to do this. So the other thing is I have who, right, like is on there. And this comes from Dan Sullivan as well, called Who Not How. He has a book called that. And there's also what I kind of coined from that, Who Not You. And I tell my doctors this, I'm going to show you how to set up a clinic, a cosmetic clinic, but you're not going to do anything. Right. So one of my clinics, I work an hour a month. We do $1 million a year. And I split that with my partner. Right. And we have all nurses in there doing all the work. So it's just like a business, right? It's the same thing. Who is going to do this? Not you. So my job is the ideation. And I go through my ideation by asking questions. Who would my ideal customer be? What would they want? What do they need? Would they write a check? Right. So just these kind of, is this, and I'm actually going through this process right now, right? I just, in the last 2 days, I have a new project that I'm working on. So now that I have my 20 days a month to do nothing, that's when I'll kind of analyze new ideas, business opportunities, and take a look at where I want to invest the next. But now I invest my mind. I don't invest my money as much. Right? Because once you've done it for 20 years, I can come in and laser solve almost any problem. Like I've yet to be stumped. And I'm not bragging or anything, but when you've been doing this for 20 years, you've been almost wiped out a couple of times. You have had to grind it. You've gone through just hell. Like you kind of figure stuff out. And I'm a learner. I read 6 books a month, 6 business books a month. So if I want to learn something, I'll listen to podcasts and read books.
There was something there, and let me see. There were there. You said books, and I was like, oh crap. Yeah. Sorry. Where'd that rabbit go? Because that rabbit brings me back to high school. I didn't have an English teacher who was a wrestler that really got me passionate about reading. Let's just say that. So,
you and me.
Yeah, I had a girlfriend that wrote my papers, and then I married her. So that part worked out. But and you cannot change my high school grades, so I'm just putting that out there now. But
I can tell you held that information for a while, right?
Yeah, I did. I was checking the clock on the statute of limitation. What's that? What's your passion that drives you to do this? Because with all these things going on and working with particularly an industry that became lucrative. There has to be a passion there to keep you going in that. So what is that passion that's driving you?
My passion is really to help people. And so years ago, maybe 10 years ago, I created a personal purpose statement. And when I was at Fairmont Hotels, we had mission statements. We did Stephen Covey's training there. So I'm a 7 Habits of a Highly Effective People disciple. I believe in the 7 habits. It was ingrained in us, and we brought that into us. One of the things that they would say at the hotel is this: never say no without offering an alternative. So it was always to help people. Someone asked you something, and I won't even get into the weird stuff that people have asked for and things we've done. Put it this way: if you need us to fly a private jet of Playboy bunnies to the resort, this is something that can be done. So needless to say, my hospitality has seen some stuff that I'm happy I've seen, right? So I know what's possible. So it's all about helping people. So my personal purpose statement is to make a positive difference in people's lives by encouraging them to see what they cannot see by serving as their guide. So as long as I can help you, I'm there. Now, here's one of my passions is speaking, right? So I'm speaking this weekend, in Scottsdale at one of our live events. And these are doctors who want to learn how to do cosmetic procedures like Botox and laser tattoo removal, right? Woo-hoo, poor doctors. Do you know the suicide rate of physicians? It's huge. It's like that in business owners. And one of the things that I look at is how am I helping? So when I'm there, I'm asking them questions, and you will not believe the crap they have to deal with. So not only do you have all the COVID shit, not only do you have, the rules change every day I show up, and now everybody's a doctor themselves because they have Google and they're coming in with 1,400 pages of what's wrong with them. And then if my son that you delivered doesn't turn into Einstein, I'm suing you for malpractice, right? So I was talking to one doctor. Well, this is common. Like an average family doctor gets probably 80 lawsuits in their, do you know how demoralizing that is? You are doing the best you can. Trust me, there is very rare does a physician go into medicine to make money or be a slacker. They go into medicine to help people. So they want to help you. So let them, right? They're using all their knowledge to make the best decision for you. They're not trying to make it worse for you. And so a couple of years ago, we had actually it was last August, we had a physician who didn't show up at one of our events, and his materials were in the back of the screen. And we're in Scottsdale. He's at a Flagstaff, ER doctor. And so I'm like, okay, well, stuff comes up. Maybe he had an extra shift. Maybe, something happened. So Friday's not there. He'll be there Saturday, right? So Saturday, he's not there. I see it. So I talked to my team coordinator. I'm like, yeah, just follow up, make sure he's okay, right? We just want to make sure everything's okay. So left some messages, didn't hear. He wasn't there that whole weekend. And then about a week later, we get a call from the office from his wife, and he had actually committed suicide 3 days before. The stress was so much working at an emergency room in Flagstaff that he just couldn't do it. And this was his out. His joy was coming to our program and learning about happy medicine. Because people who get Botox, they're not in a 911 emergency. Like this is like, I look good. I just want to look better because, these are happy, healthy people. So we say, see your sick people. Most of them want to still see sick people, but they want to have some joy in there as well to balance it. And why shouldn't they? Yeah. And so that is what really gives me my passion. And then I was doing more research, and yes, business owners, same thing. Right? How many business owners commit suicide in a year? And so that actually was where I wrote the book, Fire Yourself First. So that suicide last August triggered me to start taking how I work 10 days a month and how I have who's and other people do all the work. Right? I don't operate my 6 businesses. I don't even know what's happening most of the time, but I do have my dashboard and my scorecards, my KPIs. So yeah, very important. You can't just lose it and ignore them. Yeah, I just came off a call before this of all the KPIs, right, for the businesses. So I know every week I kind of know what's going on. And so I put that in a book called Fire Yourself First. Because so many people, whether you're a doctor or a business owner, you're grinding every day and you have blinders on. And you need to realize you need to get out of your business. Because if you're critical to your business, then you don't have a business, you have a job. Okay, let's move past you having a job here. So hire someone, delegate some, activities to other people in your team. Maybe you have enough people to do that. Because then what you do, not only do you have a breathing room and it reduces your stress, right? It also increases the value of your business, because a business that doesn't need the owner to be part of it has a 5 to 10 times more valuation than a business that's critical that the owners be there. And many business owners create their business as their retirement program. Well, Kate, invest some time in your retirement program here, right? Make sure it runs without you, because instead of 5 million, maybe you'll get 20 million for it in 10 or 20 years. So let's think ahead here. And so it's very important. And so I wanted an easy read, 4 simple steps. And so that's kind of where the book, my latest project, the book came from. And having those 20 days a month allowed me the time to write that book. And so it came out in May of this year.
Let's jump back to being able to do that, because that's one of the hard things. I was having a conversation with a client, CEO, just the other day, in that same sense. And he's like, well, I can't find somebody to replace me. I'm like, well, you're never going to find somebody to replace you, dude. You know, you've got to take this part and that part and that part. And it was Sunday morning. It was breakfast. Maybe his mind wasn't working yet into that, but he couldn't get past that point. How did you, because that's the only way that you can own multiple businesses, is you have to realize that I'm not the only one and my way is not the only way to do this. How did you come to that self-realization?
Well, it's interesting. Someone offered me $10 million for one of my businesses, and that was a good number. It was a fair valuation. It was, in all intents and purposes, I should have accepted it. But then I'm thinking, okay, what would I do next? And I'm like, you know what? I love this business, right? Why would I leave it? But there's parts of it I don't love. I don't like anything to do with accounting, bookkeeping. I don't like any administration. I've grinded. You have to be a good salesperson, right? I think that's just part of it. You have to like talking to people. You have to enjoy learning about them and then matching what you offer to them. So I like doing that. But am I on the phones answering, doing sales? Nope, not at all. Haven't done that for a decade. So it was like, okay, so if I just gave all that away, right, then I would actually have my time and I would still have the money. So this business cash flowed $2 million a year, right? Business offer was 10. So I'm like, you know what? It's not like it wasn't like, hey, I'm going to give you $80 million for your business at cash flows 2 a year, right? So this is like, this is 5 years. I'm like, hey, I want to be in this business another 5-10 years. And then I can control my taxes better as well, right? Like you do have to look at, if you have an exit, what's going to happen with that $10 million? How's that going to be dealt with? Where I can manage 2 million a lot easier, right? So for me,
that's so funny, just because that's such an obvious piece. Like you talk about like the business analysis and like making smart financial decisions. I feel like I haven't heard anybody talk about that for business exits though. And it makes so much sense. It's like, you're getting, it's like getting that huge signing bonus going to the NFL. It's like, Uncle Sam's taking half of it now.
Yeah. So silly kind of things. But so I looked at that and I'm like, you know what? And then I looked at another business, that one that I work 1 hour. Well, now I probably work 1 hour every 2-3 months in. That business we created 11 years ago. And I had a full-time job and my partner had a full-time job. So when we created it to run without us because we couldn't. So we hired one person. And then when that person got too busy, we hired a second person. Now we have 5 people working in there. It's generating $1 million a year. Our profit's about $500,600,000. We split it 50-50, and I probably work 10 hours a month in that business. So I didn't realize it but 11 years ago, but I created the system. So what I learned about that business opportunity, which is similar to a franchise, you need to have an operations manual. Right. And so when I created that business, I said, this is how you open, this is how you close. So it was a lot of work for me up front. Right? Like, here's how you run the business. Here's all your scripts. Here's all the processes that you need to follow. Here's your binder. hmm And there you go. And so that's what I do now, right? So I actually didn't realize, yeah, that's the key, right? It goes to E-Myth, right? Like way back when, one of the first books I read, along with, the classic Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I read that on my train ride to the corporate hellhole, and slowly wanted to get out, right? A long time ago.
Yeah. One thing I'm curious about, you talking about your experience working with doctors and then, that similarities with business owners. It reminds me a lot of, my wife was working with a lot of nonprofits, and you have this like nonprofit burnout. And I'm realizing that it's kind of a very similar mechanism, that it's basically like the mission, the dream is amazing. And that's a good thing. Same thing for a lot of business owners. Dad, you joked earlier, my widget's going to cure cancer. That's an amazing thing. So it's like you get yourself in this mindset where it's like, I should burn myself out because this is so important. Nonprofits, it's like, look, do you want to help the kids? Well, of course I want to help the kids. So I have to do all this extra stuff, and I can't take my weekends off and all those kind of things. How do you square those two? Because to me, it's one thing to say, well, we need to be healthy, we need to have balance, all those kind of things. But if you have this burning desire to go solve a big problem, then those can kind of push back and forth on each other. So how do you personally square those, or how do you help those doctors square those?
Well, the first thing I think about, who can do this, not me, right? So, for example, I went to India maybe 15 years ago, and I've never been to a third world country before, so I didn't know what to expect. And I was staying at the Four Seasons in Seattle on my flight out. And, I had like TVs in the mirrors. I think I had 2 TVs in my, my bathroom, and that's just the bathroom. And then I press a button and opens the things. There's the ocean. Like, this is awesome. Four Seasons. I love that hotel. And then I'm in India, where I actually had to buy my sheets for the bed on the street because the hotel didn't have any sheets, right? Like, we were in kind of rural India, and 35 million orphans there. And there is no social system. And many of them go into prostitution, child labor, all of that. And so when I came back, I'm like, you know what? I want to make a difference. So I actually built 3 orphanages there. Now, did I go and do that? Like, it's a different type of business, right? Like, I don't have the ability, but there is a place out of Texas called Angel House, and they are a group, and that's what they do, is they go to countries like India, and they've built 100, 200 orphanages. They go to the area. So you write a check to build the orphanage. They ensure the local infrastructure is there to maintain it. So you never put another penny in. Then they want you to go build another orphanage in a different town where there's a need. And so I'm like, okay, boom, I just satisfied this inner turmoil in me, right? There's always somebody that knows how to do this better than you. And it's the same thing in your business, right? You should be in charge of culture and strategy, not day-to-day operations. That, I guarantee you, like to your CEO, Otis, somebody else can do that better than you. There are people who like to balance checkbooks. Like, who are they? I don't know, but it's not me. But there's people that like to do that. So just kind of move that off to anyone. So whether it's a charitable thing or creating any type of, wherever your passion is, this gives you the ability. So now I can say I build orphanages. I give to the Veterans Food Bank. Of course, my dad's a vet, so that's very high on the list. They need money. Yep, there it is. So I have that ability because my businesses create the cash. So the businesses create the cash to give you the freedom. But isn't that why we all started our businesses? And we kind of forget about that, right?
This episode of the Cam Otis Show is brought to you by Tribe and Purpose.
Are you tired of dealing with the cost of bad leadership? It's time to make a change.
The Green Beret Leadership Program is your key to unlocking the full potential of your team.
By using GBLP to develop leaders in your business, you'll get a proactive and responsible team that embraces challenges, takes calculated risks, and takes action without constant supervision.
Developing great leaders can take a lot of time and energy, and that's why businesses tend to opt for the trial by fire and the school of hard knocks path to leadership. The truth is that wastes time and money. And folks, there's never enough of either one of those, and puts lots of extra stress on your leadership team.
Oh, yeah, and that stress has lots of bad outcomes for your team. Poor leadership drives away your quality talent, and the longer you wait to fix the problem, the more talent you're going to lose and the more money you're going to lose.
With the Green Beret Leadership Program, you can use battle-tested leadership principles of the Green Berets to develop great leaders in your team faster than with the School of Hard Knocks. You'll see changes in just a few short weeks.
And the longer you wait to take action, the more damage poor leadership can do and will do to your business.
Learn more about the impact of GBLP, that's the Green Beret Leadership Program, can have on your business, and schedule your free coaching call with the Green Beret coach. That's me, folks, Otis. Now at findyourpurpose.coach/GBLP. I'll say it again, findyourpurpose.coach/GBLP, or you can click the link in the description below.
Y'all, don't leave your team to struggle alone on their own. If you're not giving them the tools they need to be great, then they're not going to be great. You can't expect them to. So give them the tools they need to be successful.
Let's see. What do you have to do in order to be able to come to terms with firing yourself?
First of all, you have to have a purpose that's bigger than you and your business. And so it's time to think about that.
So the separation, pardon me for interrupting, but the separation from my life purpose from the business mission. That's number one, right?
Yeah, because how many of us, and I'm guilty of it, the business is the life, right? It doesn't separate at all. You can't not think about stuff all the time, right? Like just on Sunday, I created a whole business strategy, but it wasn't on purpose. Like, so it's not like, oh, I have to do this, right? Like it felt like it. I'm going to do this. I spent a couple hours by the pool doing it. And I'm like, yeah, this is all good. It was the right flow for me, right? So you want to get into that flow state where it just flows. And I'll tell you, when you only work 10 days a month, you get a lot more opportunities. Like I've had lunch at a golf club, right, with someone, and I get not an insider's deal, but a pre-release investment opportunity in apartment buildings that I wouldn't have had before. Because if the apartment building or syndication is publicized, you've missed it. It's kind of like real estate injection. Like if it's out there, it's already done. The people in the know, there's a whole other economy going on, right? And there is stuff being invested and early on. By the time it IPOs, you're too late. You've already missed it. Right. So I have to realize I don't play in that market. So I have to play earlier. Those are the investments and the opportunities you get by having lunch with people, by having dinner with people, by having breakfast with people. And when you're so focused, grinding on this little thing, like, did we pay the repair guy to do, who cares, right? You've got to be thinking way bigger than that. So first thing is your personal purpose, right? Think about where you want to be in 5 years, 10 years. Like, where do you want to be? Do you want to? And mine was in 3 years, I want to work 10 days a month. I still want to work. I will work forever, right? I'm only 54. I got a long road ahead of me. So I'm not going to stop anytime soon. It's funny. My mom asked me last weekend, when are you going to retire? Because your dad retired his first time when he was 55, and then he got dragged back into his 65. That's the government for you, right? Department of Defense. They got, Otis, right? Like, yeah, they're always dragging you back. And so I said, I'm never going to retire. But I don't work 40 hours a week. I don't work 60 hours a week, 80 hours a week. Right? I decided that was a filter for me so I can spend more time with family, friends. And what have I done with that? I actually created a visionaries breakfast. So I take business leaders in the community, all different aspects. I said, why don't we meet for breakfast every quarter? And we just met a couple of weeks ago at a breakfast. There's 12 of us. I had a real estate guy. I had a guy who's a $1 billion transportation company, right? They do trucking and all that. Guys who do the outside of buildings, so a variety of people. And we talked about only the future. What's going to happen in 3 to 5 years to us? Where are we going to be? How's this cycle going to go? Never mind, are we in a recession or not in a recession? Trust me, I've been through a lot of cycles. Recession doesn't make anything. Botox sales do not go down during a recession, right? If you're good, smart, you offer great services, you are I do not worry about recessions at all. We've seen no dips. 2008, we had diversification, so we balanced that. So I'm not too worried about that at all. So these are the things. Now all of a sudden I'm sitting, and we had the chief doctor of the entire county, like the chief doctor guy, like there's like a CEO guy. And so where is the influx of people coming? How are they getting treated? What infrastructure is going to be needed? So we had like, if you're grinding in your business, do you have an opportunity to actually connect with these people and learn more? So I learned something about hospitals that maybe I can apply to my financing business, which has nothing to do with hospitals, right? So you just never know where that's going to come. So what is that big picture? Mine's to help people. And it's however I do that will change from decade to decade. And
yeah, and I agree with you on the recession. And it's great for the news, but there's always opportunity there if you're looking for it. I mean, boy, yeah,
I get excited about a recession. I am so, like 2 years ago, then we had COVID mess thing. Just before COVID, remember, they were talking about we're going to go into recession the end of 2020, 2021. And I accumulated like 7 figures of cash to buy companies who get scared. I'm like, this is awesome, right? I remember when 2008 crashed, I bought like $1 million worth of spiders, the ETF fund, right? Vanguard's fund. And when the markets crashed for COVID, my investment was up 147%. And so you got it when people are selling. So I did another big purchase, right? March 8th, right? When the sky is falling, you got to be in that I'm buying, right? People are like, you worried about a recession? No, this is awesome, right? The people that aren't well capitalized, who are earning by the seat of their bums, these are great opportunities for me.
Oh yeah, no doubt about it. And that's a great lesson. But it's not what I learned today. I can tell you. I love the culture aspect of Club Med. That is so cool that the individuals, the staff that's supporting the clients was having meals with them. There's because there's this human nature of breaking bread together, and for that equality, truthfully, sitting there at the table with them, that is such a cool cultural aspect to do. And that's awesome that you're doing it too with your events, your live events, and having that following that same thing. Camden, how about you? What'd you learn?
I was just going to add on that. It's the one of the Trader Joe's things of they restock the shelves during the day so that you're always surrounded by people, and it just makes it feel homey. There's always someone to ask questions and those kind of things. And yeah, there's a lot that you can get out of just integrating your customer with your team like that. But no, for me, it was that mom wrote your English papers in high school. So I don't know how I'm going to use that ammunition, but I've got it now. So, it's something's coming at some point, Dad. I don't know what it is.
She told everybody. I can't believe you didn't know that.
I think one other thing I just wanted to add, we mentioned this talking about, Jeff, you're talking about investing, but I think you could really apply this to, starting businesses as well. Which was, I know I've said it before, Dad, Mr. Faraji told me once, buy on rumors, sell on headlines, right? That's what you hear that a lot for investments, but, there's something to be said for when you're looking at a business for that. If you read a headline about some new business venture out in Alabama that's doing something that popped into mind, there's a cool business, I think it's Alabama, that's like crushing glass to make sand because there's a sand shortage. Cool business, but it's like you're reading about that in the Wall Street Journal. It's already, there's already 10 copycats going up around the country. The rumor, the idea is where you really want to start putting that force forward.
Awesome. Jeff, how about you, man? What'd you learn?
The squirrel syndrome can get me and so the filter. So sometimes I've found myself even slipping. I think it's too hard, right? It's probably my biggest negative is that I'll switch into creative strategy mode when I probably shouldn't be. So to keep those filters on, right?
Awesome. Jeff, how do folks find you, connect with you, see learn more about your next event going on too?
Yeah, so the easiest way to connect with me is through the book's website. So I just kind of dump all kinds of resources in there. So the book is called Fire Yourself First, and the website is simply fireyourselffirst.com. So if you go there, and the last thing I talked about was creating your purpose, your bigger purpose, all your listeners can download a free clarity map. And that's the tool that I use to kind of do that. So you can get clear on your future. The biggest issue of any business is hiring people. And so I actually have the biggest section of the book is hiring people and the questions to ask and why. So you you can get the book on Amazon, Audible, all that stuff. And there's also my 11-step hiring guide is also on the same website. So they can download that as well. And at the very bottom of that website is my Facebook, my LinkedIn. LinkedIn's probably the best way to get through to me. But again, that website is simply fireyourselffirst.com. And then you can get all those free resources. I don't have, sure, we do training to physicians, but I don't do any workshops. I don't do consulting. I don't do anything. It's all in the book. It's unfiltered. It's everything I learned is in the book. So for $15, it's all yours. So I guarantee a 10 times return, at least 100, I would hope.
There you go. Well, hey, Jeff, man, this has been great. A lot of great lessons. Sure appreciate your time with us today.
It was awesome. Thank you so much, Otis and Camden. You guys were awesome hosts.
Cam, run us out.
All right. Thank you all for listening to today's episode of the Cam Otis Show. And a special thanks to our guest, Jeff Russell, for joining us today. Remember, you can watch full episodes of the show on YouTube at the Cam Otis Show. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please make sure to share it with other lifelong learners in your tribe so that they can enjoy it too. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. As always, the full archive of episodes available at www. Thanks again, and we'll see y'all next time.